Okay. For this next painting, you are going to need black and white, primary blue, hooker's green, medium yellow, cadmium yellow, so the darker yellow, crimson, and burnt sienna. Now for your background, we are going to need black, white, and burnt sienna. And then you're going to want your rougher brushes to give it texture. I really like these straw ones when it comes to giving texture because, again, we are making barnwood. I'm sure you're sick of it by now. In my corners, I'm going to put a blob of white in each corner. And a couple just around my board. And then I already have black on my paint tray, so I'm going to use some from my paint tray because you don't need a lot. But I'm going to just take some black and plop it down into each corner so that way when I paint those corners, it turns kind of gray. You need less black than you have white. So see, once I start brushing out those corners and brush it down, it makes a gray. So then what I'm going to do is take my burnt sienna, and I've made some bigger globs than I probably need, and I'm going to start painting, making sure I'm doing vertical strokes, making sure my board is vertical, and I'm going to paint my whole board. Now you might want to add in some more white, you might want to add in some more black, but you want it very rustic looking. With the black, I suggest putting it on a paint tray and then mixing it in because otherwise it's going to be a very strong color in your board. Ooh, I like how that corner just mixed. Sometimes your longer strokes are your better strokes. I wanted that gray undertone in the corners and I'm getting it. I need to add some more black and white, which I have from my last painting still. A little bit of blue and green in it, but that's not gonna matter much. What I just did in that corner is exactly what I wanted. Try to not touch that now. Try to get all the way out to the edge. Scoop some white. Now my white still has some colors in it from Starry Night because that's just what I had left on my paint tray. And I'm trying to use up some stuff on my paint tray. Trying to keep all my strokes vertical. I don't want any horizontal lines because I want my boards to look like they're vertical. With this brush being so straw-like, it's already leaving that kind of wood grain texture on there. So that's gonna keep me from having to do a lot later on. Add a little bit more black in there. Notice I just went in with straight black and that was kind of harsh. But I do like how that went, so I'm gonna do it a little bit more. Try to pull some of this paint up here so I don't have to add more because I would hate to have to add more. I'm just kind of mixing it around without over blending. That's going to be your hard part, is to try very hard not to over blend. Thankfully, I was able to use up my white and black just now that I had over poured on there. I have some nice texture on there. And I'm going to let it dry. So that way I can come back and add my lines. Now, if you want to add in more black or more gray, white tones, you go for it. I want mine lighter. We're going to put a jar of daisies on top, so you might not want to go too crazy. It just depends on how much you like that red tone. All right? Okay. So now that my background is dry, I'm going to use a very skinny brush. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to use a very skinny brush and some black on my paint tray. Use this one, it's cleaner. And honestly, if you have a Sharpie, you can use a Sharpie for this part too. you're just creating the board lines. So I'm going to very lightly, trying to make this as skinny as I can, but as fast as I can, because I don't want it perfectly straight, but I also want it solid. One, two, I'm gonna do 3 lines. And that got a lot fatter than I wanted it to right there, but beggars can't be choosers. And I'm going to make a mason jar right here, so that doesn't need to be super perfect right there. And there's that. So now I'm going to go through and make some horizontals in different places. And by those horizontals, I'm going to make little dots, just for like little nails, I guess. And this is kind of a rustic barn, so don't worry if your cracks are bigger. Some boards settle, you know. So it's not like everything needs to be totally perfect. I'm trying to be real soft with how much paint I'm putting on so that I can then do my jar next. Put one down here. So nothing too crazy. Voila, boards. So next, I am going to take another tiny paintbrush. And in the middle here, I am going to mix some white and primary blue. I'm just going to put them very close together on my paint tray. I'll show you my paint tray here in just a bit. So there's my paint tray. And I'm going to take, oh, where's my camera part? There it is. I'm going to take my blue and just mix a little bit into my white and pull more and more white. Notice I took the blue to the white. You only need to take a little bit. And then what I'm going to do about right here is make the opening to my jar. Notice I'm not really worried about making a solid line right now. I'm just creating my jar. And so now I'm going to make some ripples coming down. So it's not a solid line, there are ripples right there. Because then I'm going to curve that and I'm going to throw in some white lines, some blue lines to create that kind of texture that is on a mason jar. I'm going to kind of blend that in right there. I'm going to come in with just a little bit more white. And then I'm going to use that mixed color that I made again and solidify this a little bit more for my jar opening. Now you can mess with this several different ways. If you want to look up multiple ways to do this part, you can. I'm sure there are other YouTube tutorials. I'm sure if you Google how to paint a mason jar, they'll probably tell you. Notice I left a lot of different shades in there. And actually, I'm going to clean off my brush a little bit and go in for just some white. And add in some bright whites along there for some highlight. Just like that. Now you can make your jar as tall as you want. It is not a big deal. I'm going to throw in a little bit of a back line in here. Kind of that drop line. And then I'm going to use more of that light blue to drop my jar down. Now here's the hard part. I did one side. Now to make the other side extremely similar. Obviously, I am not expecting you to have perfect symmetry. Try your best. Play with it. I didn't get that super solid, but I'm going to clean off my paintbrush and use a little bit of the just blue, plain blue. And again, create that illusion of glass. That's the other thing with this line, is it is glass. So you don't need it super solid. You don't need it all one color. Don't overblend. You want it to look like it is glass. Do some blue over here. Got maybe too much down there. And go back in with some white. Actually, I am pretty proud of my jar. My sides might be off just a little bit, but way better than I thought I would do going into this. So you might also surprise yourself a little bit. Now, if you want, you can write ball across. That's totally up to you. I am not going to force you to do anything on there that you wouldn't want to do. I'm going to leave it blank. I might go back later and add something, but right now, I'm not worried about it. We're still going to draw stems going through, so you might want to wait as well.